Vanessa for organizing this event. So I'll just talk briefly about a project I'm helping to lead. And the idea of this project is to have a really bottom-up, stakeholder-driven collaboration between agricultural stakeholders and natural resource scientists and managers. And I feel like it really complements other previous and ongoing efforts. One way it differs is that it's region-wide and is intended to include the Elk River Basin. It's a project of the Coastal Ecosystems Institute of Northern California with funding from the North Pacific Landscape Conservation Cooperative, and most of that funding is from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And I don't need to dwell on this slide very long. Alderman did a really nice job of discussing the various other previous work that's gone on. The Humboldt Bay Sea Level Rise Adaptation Planning Project, which had a couple of phases, and Alderman and Jeff Anderson and Cascadia Geosciences all did a really excellent job doing a lot of this work. And the cities and Humboldt County are now updating their local coastal programs and doing vulnerability assessment and adaptation planning. And there's also some ongoing, at least proposals, to do some pilot implementation, planning and implementation in the Eureka Face Slough hydrologic subunit, which is nice to have a sort of low-hanging fruit, something that the idea is to get something on the ground happening quickly. In contrast, this effort that we're doing is really foundational, outreach-based. We have this vulnerability assessment, which is completed for Humboldt Bay, but not the Eel River Basin, which has established that there's extensive ag land that's very vulnerable. That a lot of those projects focused on infrastructure, but there was, as Alderman mentioned, a significant component looking at ag land. And there's this effort now looking at Eureka Face Slough, but that's sort of pretty specific to an area. So our goal is to work with landowners sort of regionally, that includes not just Humboldt Bay, but down in the Eel River Basin, and put our heads together with landowners. And early on in the project, Paula Golightly, who is now up in Portland, unfortunately. She's not part of the project any longer, but she still is very supportive, as is Dina Moore. But Dina and Paula and I put our heads together and came up with a list, I think, of really excellent folks who have a lot of connections to the ag community. Jill Demers with Humboldt County Resource Conservation District, Joel Gerwine with the Coastal Conservancy, Sharon Kahara is a professor at Humboldt State. Lisa Schmaley is now stepping up to Paula's position. We just heard from John, and Jeff Stackhouse is with UC Cooperative Extension. And we've met, we've had several meetings and done a lot of thinking, and it turns out gone in a little bit of circles in terms of ideas about how to get this project rolling. And it's a challenge because of the threat posed by sea level rise and the controversiality of it, and the fact that there are a lot of agricultural landowners who don't really accept sea level rise, and so thinking about how to outreach to those folks has been something we've spent a lot of time on, learned a lot from each other, and I, being a Sea Grant guy, don't know as much about and have as much connection with the ag stakeholders, so having those folks involved has been really critical. So yeah, we want to have this proactive approach, working with these ag stakeholders on a region-wide basis to come up with strategies that meet the needs of both the ag folks as well as the natural resource folks. And one thing we think is really important is to, from the very get-go, engage with ag stakeholders before any kind of strategies are considered. So we are, and also in our outreach to them, at least initially, we're going to really focus on tangible existing impacts, not abstract concepts like sea level rise, but the sort of symptoms or things that go along with it: the aging, failing dikes, tide beats, subsidence, drainage problems, a lot of these things that Alderon laid out that accompany sea level rise, but you don't have to use that word I'm talking with about. So this project is still pretty early in its execution, so we've established the steering committee, developed a project work plan, and then we're just finalizing right now, actually, the list of folks who we want to invite to be part of the Natural Resources Working Group. And that's going to be focused mostly on the folks who are topical experts, scientists, and managers. And one of the things that we really want to focus on in thinking about this is not trying to promote or sell any particular strategies, but just explore the possibilities with ag stakeholders, just with the constraints of physics and economic reality, without dwelling too much on things like regulations. I mean, there are some constraints there, but so we have a survey that we're already working on to better understand the perspectives of agricultural stakeholders and their options they might be willing to consider. We hope to complete that by September. And we're going to choose the agricultural stakeholders who are going to reach out to. We sort of have a short list of folks for that as well. And then we'll survey them, write a summary report, and definitely we'll share that report with our stakeholders before we share it with anyone else, to make sure they feel comfortable with its contents. And towards the end is when we'll have a symposium that's informed by this survey that allows us to ensure that at the symposium people aren't going to talk past each other, because I think that happens too often in controversial topics, including this one. So our goal is to really set up a symposium where it can be as productive as possible, and the ag stakeholders really can feel like, well, where we actually do really understand where they're coming from, and go into the meeting with an idea of what kinds of conversations they're ready to have. So we'll have this symposium hopefully around this time next year, and then prepare a report on the outcome and sort of future directions. And with that, I just again thank the workshop hosts and the funders of this project. And that's all. Thanks.